I know who you are. See we one another clearly, do we know who we are? Whoa, so is life a fuck you all. So is life. Whoa, so is life a fuck you all. So is life. Water make the river wash the mountain. Fire make the sunlight turn the world around. Heart is of the river, body is the mountain, spirit is the sunlight, turn the world around. We are of the spirit, truly of the spirit, only can the spirit turn the world around. Whoa, so is life a better world. So is life. Whoa, so is life a better world. So is life. Whoa, so is life a better world. So is life. Whoa, so is life a better world. Hey, so is life.
Welcome to the Morristown Unitarian Fellowship. You're joining us on a special community day. Today is the feast of St. Francis of Assisi. Both here in our worship at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. Eastern, or whenever it is that you're tuning in, and also in our 10 o'clock religious education programming. We will be honoring our connection to animals and to the interconnected web of all life. And if you're tuning in on Sunday, October 4th, you're also invited to bring your pet or a photo of your pet, plus a blanket or lawn chair to our socially distanced animal blessing ritual at 4 o'clock on our grounds. Tending to the web of existence is one of the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism. We do this as a people inspired by mystics and prophets like St. Francis, as a people inspired by the teachings of earth-centered traditions, and as a people inspired by our fellow members whose careers or volunteer work is connected to science, nature, conservation, and environmental justice. People like Nan Perigo and Kendall Martin, who you'll meet next, 2 biology professors, and Nan also happens to be one of our board members. Again, welcome to our virtual sanctuary.
We open our worship services by lighting the flaming chalice. This is a symbol of our faith, and it connects us with Unitarian Universalists throughout the whole world.
If you have a chalice at home, we encourage you to light it alongside us.
As we light our chalice, we will recite the covenant written by James Vila Blake that we often share in this community. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, of the one light Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
We have a special guest with us. I'm excited to have the chance to interview a docent from the Turtleback Zoo, our very own Jerry Weinstein. Let's begin. Jerry, what inspired you to volunteer at the Turtleback Zoo?
A friend at the YMCA told me while we were exercising about a volunteer training that was coming up at the Turtleback Zoo in West Orange. I was retired, and to be honest, I was eager to volunteer my time in an area that I purposefully didn't know a lot about currently. My tendency, you see, in volunteer experiences was to take advantage of what I already knew and use that experience in the volunteer job. Now that's fine, but I really needed to do something very different this time. Thing is, I was a bit of a tough sell initially regarding the zoo because, to be honest, my memories of that zoo weren't 100% positive. Going back 40 years, I remembered the zoo as a place that seemed to have the sole purpose of entertaining their guests with little regard for the animals' physical and mental needs. I quickly changed my mind about that as the training began, as I learned to my delight that the modern zoo, which I learned Turtleback Zoo had evolved to be, is now part of a system of accredited zoos around the country that focus on fostering education about wildlife conservation. The goal? To have current and future generations be inspired to appreciate and protect the fragile independence of all living things. Now that sounded like something that would resonate well with my faith and my values. In the training, I'd like to quickly note that we have the philosophy of being very intentional about being playful and being present during our shift, with the principal goal of making someone's day. It could be a child, or it could be a frazzled parent who's relieved to have me or another docent engage their child with a feather or two that I just happened to have on me, or a talon replica. In conclusion, many is the day I left my troubles at the zoo's education building entrance and left 4 or 5 hours with a very, very big smile.
That's interesting to hear about the changing role of the zoo. Can you share an experience you've had with one of the animals?
One winter evening, a little before Christmas, I was nice and warm in the reptile house, helping to sell photos and animal art to raise money for the zoo. A light snow started to fall outside, and the flow of visitors had basically ended. I decided to take a break and walk the grounds. As I walked across the paths of unbroken snow, and we have 27 acres at the zoo, I was by myself enjoying the sights and special holiday lights, and noticing that my own footprints were the only evidence of human presence at that hour. I passed our bison, who stood unmoving as the snow piled onto their mighty backs. I decided to climb up the steep, slippery hill to the enclosed area where our wolves congregate. Our wolves were hand-raised and are pretty comfortable with humans. But as I approached the viewing area, they approached me, curious about who would be coming to see them at that late hour. One by one, they each came over to check me out. Each of us, human and wolf, pressed against the glass separating us in the den, eyeing each other deeply and patiently. It was a very, very memorable moment for me, a privileged opportunity, if you will, to see these wonderful creatures without the usual hubbub of a zoo that sees nearly 1 million children and adults every year.
You told that story so well, I could literally hear the snow crunching beneath your feet. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
Most of our work as volunteers is with school groups or children who come with their parents or guardians. And as you probably know, kids love to ask questions about where they fit and where things fit generally in the order of the world. And I can use any questions they have sometimes as a way to teach. Is this animal smart? A child might ask. You know what? It's as smart as it needs to be to do its job. Every animal has evolved to be good at what it needs to do to find food, to stay safe, and to take care of its babies. You know what? I have an opinion about who the smartest is. I think it's the raven. They know how to make tools. They can talk or imitate other animals. And you know what? They love to play. They love to roll down a snowy roof or play grab the stick with each other. They even like to play dead sometimes with our zookeepers by lying on their back and then jumping up when the keeper approaches to see what's wrong. I'm not sure if they can smile, but if any bird can smile, it's the raven. Does it bite? You know what? Everything bites. How did you get these animals? Lots of ways. Some of our animals are born and hand-raised in this zoo, like our wolves. Other animals come from other zoos to join animals we have of the same kind so they can have healthy babies. It's all part of our worldwide species survival program to help rare types of animals thrive and in some cases even be brought back to where they are normally found in the wild. Another example of how we get animals are the eagles. The eagles we have here were hurt when they were in the forest, and a forest ranger brought them here so they could have a good life. And if you've been to the turtle house, our turtles came here to recover from boats that hit them and other things that hurt them, and we're going to bring them back to the ocean when they get better. Who is the most dangerous animal in the zoo? I point to myself and say that humans are the most dangerous because we've sometimes had a bad effect on many of the world's animals by taking away their places to live or by hunting them until there aren't very many of their kind left. Our job here at the zoo is to tell you and your parents that we humans need to do a much better job of protecting our world's wildlife. You can help too. Would you like to learn how? You know, I could go on for hours talking about our animals and the wonderful children and adults who come to the zoo to have fun, but sometimes also to learn about wildlife. I'd like to end with one COVID-related story. Now, as you probably would guess, the zoo was closed to visitors for about 3 months. The zookeepers, of course, stayed on duty to help the animals, and we would have Zoom meetings, just like we do at the fellowship, to stay in touch with one another. And one thing they wanted to tell us is that how much the animals seem to miss us, the docents, and you, the visitors. You know what? We miss them too.
I know our family missed getting to see the animals. It's powerful to be reminded of the role that we can play for good or for ill. Jerry, thank you for spending St. Francis of Assisi Day with us and for all of your volunteer work to support wildlife and conservation. Canticle of the Creatures, a prayer by St. Francis of Assisi.
Praised be you, my Lord, with all your creatures, especially Sir Brother Sun, who is the day and through whom you give us light.
And he is beautiful and radiant with great splendor, and bears a likeness of you, Most High One.
Praised be you, my Lord, through Sister Moon and the stars in heaven. You formed them clear and precious and beautiful.
Praised be you, my Lord, through Brother Wind, and through the air, cloudy and serene, and every kind of weather, through whom you give sustenance to your creatures.
Praised be you, my Lord, through Sister Water, who is very useful and humble and precious and chaste.
Praised be you, my Lord, through Brother Fire, through whom you light the night, and he is beautiful and playful, and robust and strong.
Praised be you, my Lord, through our sister Mother Earth, who sustains and governs us, and who produces various fruit with colored flowers and herbs.
Praise and bless my Lord, and give him thanks, and serve him with great humility.
Amen.
When you see statues of Saint Francis of Assisi, who was born at the end of the 12th century in Italy, he is often depicted with birds around him and sometimes with a wolf at his side. One of the most loved legends about Saint Francis involved him saving the town of Gubbio from the jaws of a ferocious wolf. The people of Gubbio were fearful of and furious at a wolf in the forest just outside of town. The wolf was killing their livestock and had even killed some of their people. The first to die was a shepherd who tried to remove the threat. Then his brother and father went after the wolf, and they were killed. Finally, the mayor sent his best 3 guards, and only one came back, telling a frightening tale. The mayor had heard of St. Francis, who lived nearby in Assisi, and how he had a way with animals. He even heard that the fish, birds, and creatures of all kinds would stop and listen when Francis spoke to them. The mayor sent messengers to Assisi to request his help. When St. Francis arrived in Gubbio, he listened to the stories of fear, pain, and loss shared by the shepherds, the victims' families, and the mayor. They worried about hunger. They felt alone. They wanted revenge. At the very least, they wanted the wolf to be stopped. Some townspeople warned St. Francis, "Don't go to that wolf." But he and some of his disciples set out on the journey anyway. As the sound of the wolf's fearsome howls and growls drew nearer and nearer, the disciples ran away. They were too afraid to face the danger. But Francis kept on walking towards the wolf at a slow, deliberate pace. All the while, the wolf moved closer. He was stalking Francis. When the two caught one another's eyes, Francis raised his hand and called out, "Come, my brother wolf, and join me. I will not hurt you. I come in peace." The wolf's ears perked up at something so unexpected, and he shifted back onto his hind legs, attentive to listen for what would happen next. Francis began to tell stories of the people of Gubbio and about their side of things. He shared about their hunger, their grief, and their fear. Children were no longer allowed to go outside and play. Francis asked, "Why are you harming these people?" Then the wolf replied with his side of things. "My pack left me here alone when I was injured. I can't chase after rabbits and deer right now. Goats and sheep do not run away so quickly. Then, when the shepherd came, he was going to kill me. I had to defend myself. And when the other men followed, it was exactly the same. There was no time for talk, only to act with the hope of survival." St. Francis listened to the wolf's pain, to his story of sorrow and loss, and then he spoke. "If you will stop harming the livestock and the people of Gubbio, I will help you." St. Francis returned to Gubbio with the wolf at his side. The townspeople were relieved that Francis was spared, but their hearts were filled with anger and hatred against what they saw as a violent monster approaching. St. Francis shared the two sides of the story and a vision that he had of how the wolf and the people of Gubbio could make peace. Brother Wolf needed to eat just like the people of Gubbio. Brother Wolf needed forgiveness just like the people of Gubbio. Brother Wolf needed others just like they did. And so the hard work of forgiveness and the hard work of making amends began. It was the wife of the shepherd who was killed first that was the first to accept that this wolf meant no harm. And it was she who brought the wolf something to eat. In return, the wolf said, "I promise to protect your people for as long as I shall live." In the coming weeks and months, the wolf healed due to the care and feeding of the people of Gubbio. And the people of Gubbio, they healed as well. It turned out that there were two angry, violent factions in that town. Revenge was something that they sought a lot, and not just where the wolf was concerned. But something shifted that day when they learned how to listen to the other side and how to take the first steps to say, "Come, my brother, my sister, my sibling, come. Let us make peace together." St. Francis cultivated a level of compassion, courage, and creativity that led him to believe that all of creation was a family, and that we should treat the air, the water, the land, animals of every kind, including our fellow human beings, as our siblings. He returned to that vision throughout his life, and it came to fruition initially through his dedication to animals and nature, and ultimately in his efforts to serve people on the margins of society. As a prophet committed to viewing the world and all of its inhabitants as one family, it is no wonder that he also wished to contribute to peace and reconciliation. Not the meek sort of peace that exists in the absence of conflict, nor merely the peace of civility, but rather the strength of a peace that comes from listening deeply to the plight of another and recognizing in their own suffering your own. It's an active kind of peacemaking that requires daily movements towards reconciliation and restoration. It's also about listening to the side that has so often not been heard and amplifying that voice. It's about wanting love to win and less about winning yourself. If Francis were here today to represent our kindred whose sides are too often left out of the political debates, endangered species, brother air, sister water, mother earth, siblings who are poor or oppressed, I suspect that he would have heard quite a bit and have a lot to say. He would surely notice from all the stories that he heard how the losses in our environment have led to disproportionate suffering amongst the poor and people of color. Perhaps if he were here, he would rejoice, though, at the role his beloved wolves are playing in restoring balance and harmony at Yellowstone Park. Coincidentally, the year that the National Park System and Yellowstone in particular was first created, 1872, that is the same year that they found the bones of a wolf buried at the foundations of a church dedicated to St. Francis in Gubbio. By 1995, the ecosystem of Yellowstone had collapsed. Scientists reintroduced the top predator, the gray wolf, 14 of them back into the park. In their 70-year absence, the elk and the deer had proliferated and they were overgrazing the vegetation. When the wolves were reintroduced, they started to kill some of the elk and deer, and their presence also meant that these prey avoided going to the valleys and gorges where they would be most vulnerable. In those less visited areas, trees quintupled in size, growing large enough finally to be too big for the elks to eat. These aspens and willows became home to birds. The grasses and the willows also helped the riverbanks to become more stable. Where there are trees, the beavers will come. The beavers created dams, deepening the water and calming the currents, which is very good for the fish. And the fish multiplied and drew hungry bears. And so many forms of life returned to Yellowstone. It took decades of work, but the ecosystem continues to move towards balance and restoration. There are over 500 wolves now in Yellowstone Park. One of the litany of environmental policies that are currently being rolled back to earlier, less environmentally conscious times is the status of the wolf, as efforts are underway this year to erode the Endangered Species Act. While it took decades to restore the Yellowstone ecosystem, it only takes several years for unchecked hunting to eliminate them entirely. Losing the wolf would be destructive, but today we also need to understand how climate change is impacting the Yellowstone, along with everything else. Two examples in Yellowstone are bark beetle outbreaks and increasing wildfires. As we are aware, most reputable scientific organizations have shared the hard truth that humans are largely to blame for climate change. Remember what Jerry Weinstein, our Turtleback Zoo docent, shared earlier to the question, who is the most dangerous animal in the zoo? He pointed to himself, saying, humans. We are the top of the food chain and too often over-consuming in ways that threaten the stability of all of our siblings in the family of all beings, including other human beings. Last June, we passed a climate justice resolution in our congregation's annual meeting. We have a goal of working through our Climate Justice Task Force and our Green Earth Ministry to reduce our individual and collective carbon footprints right now and to work towards restoration of harmony with our Mother Earth. If you want to be connected to either of these groups, email care@muuf.org. I'm on that distribution list along with a few others, and we'll make sure that you get connected to this important work. This month, all of us are invited to join the Morristown Unitarian Fellowship's team in the People's Eco Challenge. We will engage in this friendly competition for environmental and social good together for 3 weeks from October 7th to the 28th. So join our team. Go to peoples.ecochallenge.org. Returning to the legend of the Wolf of Gubbio. Some Franciscan friars teach that part of the story, which doesn't always get told, is that when St. Francis heard about the strife amongst the people of Gubbio, he planted a community of his monks right there in the middle of that town, so that they could model what it looked like to live as sibling with beast and flower, with friend and foe. Maybe the wolf that was tamed in the end had less to do with a fearful beast outside of town and more to do with the threat posed by something closer, a ferocious fear or an insatiable greed. Maybe the wolf is us, and out of our pain and loneliness, we are harming others. One thing I know is true. is that Brother Francis is waiting on that other path, the higher road. Or if we are already on that higher path of reconciliation and restoration, he may just be a little bit further down that road, calling for us to catch up, saying, "Come, my friend, my sibling, come. Let us move together to build the peaceable kingdom." Amen, and blessed be, and may it be so.
They bark and meow, they run and they sleep, they scamper and jump and they lie on the couch, they nicker and neigh, they slither and creep, they pounce and they scurry, they crawl and they crouch. The creatures we love are a sacred delight, with eyes that are bright and with tongues that are rough. They brighten our days and they wake us at night. Our praises we sing for the creatures we love. With fins and with fangs, with feathers and fur, they rest in their cages and swim in their tanks. Each squeak and each squawk, each judder and purr joins in with creation in offering thanks. The creatures we love bring us wonder and joy. They help us get through when the going is tough. They open our hearts even when they annoy. Our praises we sing for the creatures we love. They leap from the chair, they prowl in the woods, they knead and they cuddle, they snuggle and sigh. The essence of proof, creation is good, a blessing we cherish for all of our lives. The creatures we love are an instant of grace. The tiny, the giant, each one is enough. A part of the ultimate holy embrace. Our praises we sing for the creatures we love. Our praises we sing for the creatures we love.
From all that dwell below the skies, let faith and hope with love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be done by every hand, paw, claw. Yes, everyone.
We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around.
We come from the mountain, living on the mountain. Go back to the mountain, turn the world around.
Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Do you know
No, man.
who I am?
You don't know.
Do I know
Where you from?
who you are?
Irie.
See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are?
Yes.
Do you know who I am?
No.
Do I know who you are?
I wish.
See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are?
What?
Do you know who I am?
Yes.
Do I know who you are?
Where?
See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Water make the river, river wash the mountain. Fire make the sunlight turn the world around.
What?
Heart is of the river, body